You're very welcome to today's talk. It is Saturday the 20th of February 2021. Now I just want to start on a slightly personal note actually, because I told you that I had my the first vaccine. It was the Pfizer one, day before last. So I was just lucky that the surgery had a few left at the end of the session, so I got one. And I was just really quite amazed and really quite moved really about the amount of people that were saying I'm really pleased for you. So it was really quite quite humbling really. So thank you for all those people that said that. I appreciate that. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. If you haven't got yours, hope you get it soon. Arm feels basically normal again now, and I feel completely tickety boo. Absolutely, that's old English for cool and fine. So great. It's what's not to love? It's fantastic. Right, a bit of science today integrated with some practical applications and some interesting things. Nothing too heavy. It's the weekend, so let's get straight down to the details today. Now, the first is probably, well, slightly heavyish, but it's not too bad. Safety and efficacy of the Pfizer vaccine, mRNA messenger ribonucleic acid vaccine for COVID-19. Now, this is from New England Journal of Medicine. This was published on the 31st of December, so we're going back a little bit here. And this is basically the phase 3 clinical trial review. A 2-dose regime of the Pfizer vaccine conferred 94.8% protection against COVID-19 in persons 16 years old and 16 years of age and older. And after one dose, it conferred a resistance. There was 52.4% less cases. So on the face of that, it looks like it's pretty weak after one, but then after two you get 94.8%. And this was the information that entire national vaccine programs were rightly at that time going on the data we've got to follow the evidence based on. So the United States, for example, based its entire vaccine program on that. That's how we started off in the UK in the very early stages, but, and it's a big but, that data of 52.4% efficacy after the first vaccine included the whole period between the first vaccine and the second vaccine 3 or 4 weeks later. And in the first 2 weeks, there's no benefit at all. But in the third and fourth week, there's massive benefit. So it brought the average way down because it included these first 2 weeks where there was no efficacy of the vaccine. Because it was actually designed to test for two studies, not to 2 doses, not for one. So that looked disappointing. National strategies were based on that, but now we know more. I really believe it's time to move on, and this has got massive implications for the whole global vaccination campaign. Now let me give you evidence for this. New England Journal of Medicine, 17th of February. But if you take data after 2 weeks, so you wait for 2 weeks for the immunity to build up, then one Pfizer shot vaccine efficacy of 92.6. This is even better than the Israeli data yesterday. Now, yesterday we looked at the Israeli data. It was 90, I can't remember, it was 90 and 91%, wasn't it? Which is fantastic. But this New England Journal of Medicine data, taking FDA data, puts that up to 92.6 efficacy after a single dose. And after the Moderna, it was 92.1. And again, Food and Drug Administration data. These are stunning figures and really need to be taken cognizance of all over the world now. I believe there needs to be a change of policy all over the world as a result of this. Uncertainty about the duration of protection with a single dose. Okay, we have that. But we looked at the Israeli data yesterday that says it's pretty good from up to 9 weeks. And it's only 9 weeks that have elapsed. It could be up to 6 months, we don't really know. But if it's 9 weeks already, we know it's 9 weeks because 9 weeks have elapsed, and it's not going to fall off dramatically. So this could actually carry on being efficacious for quite some time, really quite some time. We don't know how long, but we can monitor that, of course. We can monitor it. Administration of a second dose within 1 month added little added benefit in the short term. So giving the other dose, okay, it's going to put it up from 92.6% efficacy in the case of the Pfizer, up to 94.8%. So yeah, it's better than nothing, but it's not a massive difference. It's not a massive difference is what they're saying. But all the vaccines that you give, bunking people up from 92.6% efficacy, bunking them up to 94.8% efficacy, welcome though that is, leaves high-risk groups or many in high-risk groups, completely unprotected. Because the big limiting factor at the moment is vaccine supply. In the United States and the UK, we could probably be actually injecting 3-4 times more people than we are now. It is the supply that's limited. And I think this has got major implications which have probably become obvious already from what I've said. Postponement of a second dose is a matter of national security. Direct quote from this New England Journal of Medicine paper. Direct quote. Matter of national security that, if ignored, will certainly result in thousands of COVID-related hospitalizations and deaths this winter in the United States. So this is saying, and I must say I agree, that as a matter of urgency, thousands of lives are at stake here, that the United States should seriously consider moving on to a 1 dose followed by a 3-month gap strategy rather than the current 2-dose strategy it's got. When they instigated it, it was the evidence-based thing to do. Now we've accrued so much more evidence to follow the evidence wherever it's leading as we know it now. As of the 20th of February, we're no longer at the end of December. They really need to move with the times, and this can save a lot of lives. Let's hope they're seriously considering this. And this has got applications for the vaccine programs in Europe and everywhere, Canada, everywhere. Hospitalizations and deaths that would have been prevented with the first dose of vaccine. I think that is pretty powerful evidence, and they really need to be considering that as a matter of grave urgency. When the UK first did it with the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, the data wasn't as complete as we'd like it to be, but we were desperate. With the Oxford vaccine, the data was there, but we were desperate. So did we take a bit of a chance with the Pfizer vaccine in the UK? You could argue that. I think we actually did take a bit of a chance. But heck, has it paid off? It's paid off big time. And given that we want to learn from each other, learn from the UK experience, learn from the Israel data, and most countries should, during this period of limited supply, move on to a single-dose strategy. Save thousands of lives, but it's no sign of it happening in the United States, for example. I really do hope I know it's being considered, but let's hope something is made soon, some decision is made soon. New Zealand and Australia, going down to the Antipodes, begin vaccine rollout. So New Zealand, they actually started yesterday on Friday. Of course, in New Zealand, it's the day after already because they're way ahead of us. Something to do with the international date line and the way the Earth turns. But they actually started doing some healthcare providers on Friday. General rollout started on Saturday. That's today if you're watching in the UK or the States. Border staff, managed isolation and quarantine workers. And I agree completely with doing these relatively small amounts of people first because they don't have community spread in Australia or in New Zealand. And the outbreaks that there have been in the workers that manage these quarantine hotels and isolation facilities. So it makes perfect sense to vaccinate those people first. Absolutely perfect sense. Australians are starting in 2 days' time on Monday. Good news. And again, hotel quarantine healthcare workers first. And as far as I know, it's all the Pfizer jab so far in both countries. So, good news. Good news. And the populations in those countries relatively small. The initial numbers are going to be fairly low, but the populations are fairly small. So pretty optimistic they can get their vaccines completed for the whole populations by summertime. Don't see any reason why not, especially as they're going to be manufacturing. The Oxford vaccine is going to be manufactured in Melbourne. I'm pretty sure it's Melbourne, certainly in Australia somewhere. Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Now, this is more good news. This is just from the popular press, but it's in a few outlets. There's been updated stability data on the vaccine. So, and they now believe it can be transported at normal medical freezer temperatures between minus 15 degrees centigrade and minus 25 degrees centigrade for up to 2 weeks. So minus 20 degrees centigrade is minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit if you're watching in the States, just to give you an idea. So this would be so normal freezers, of course, are everywhere. I've got one. You've probably got one. I keep stuff in the freezer. So my normal domestic freezer would be good enough to keep the vaccine in, as opposed to the minus 70 or 80 degrees centigrade and the dry ice top-ups that were required. It's a significant breakthrough if this is the case. So instead of minus 60 to minus 80, so much better. That's far too cold, although we thought it was necessary. And then once you've taken it out of the freezer, they think it will keep in an ordinary fridge for 5 days. Now the combination of this, the normal freezer temperatures, and this will revolutionise the rollout and the usefulness of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Absolutely revolutionise it. Because it's technology that's everywhere. Everyone has a freezer. Okay, there's going to be problems in some areas, in some, in the Ethiopian highlands or somewhere, but it's going to make it so much more manageable. Normal fridge temperatures, of course, means it can be transported in a normal cool box or in the back of any vehicle with a simple refrigeration facility. We're not talking anything high-tech here. I mean, the sort of fridge that keeps your beer cool would work for this. Awaiting US Food and Drug Administration approval. So we're waiting the approval. Of course, it has to be properly checked out. Now, the Moderna normal fridge temperatures, the Moderna is transported in normal freezers, the other RNA vaccine. Normal fridge temperatures, 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, it will last for 30 days. So it's not quite as good as the Moderna, but it's getting better. The difference is that these vaccines, the RNA in these vaccines are in like a lipid surrounding layer, because you need the lipid layer around about the RNA to fuse with the lipid layer around the cell membranes, because cell membranes are all fatty, so that they can fuse to let the RNA in to the cells. That's why that lipid is necessary. And it's the difference in the constituents of those lipids to facilitate entry of the vaccine into the cells that have the different cold requirements. It's not the RNA vaccine itself. Now, it's quite actually a bit unclear to me whether this is a reappraisal of the initial Pfizer vaccine, or whether Pfizer have jiggled it slightly to allow this to be to allow it to be stable at higher temperatures. I think it's just a reappraisal of the data. Anyway, that's got revolutionary potential for getting the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine out all over the place, because it makes the cold chain supply so much simpler if you can use conventional freezers rather than high-tech centralised minus 60 to minus 80 facilities. So good news. Now, controversial one next, but interesting. I think it's important to mention this. Vaccine passports. This is Professor Wilkinson, medical ethicist, University of Oxford, speaking on BBC Media. I think there's a strong ethical case for exploring immune passports as a way forward, as a way of looking forward to more freedoms. So some sort of electronic device on a phone, or added to a conventional passport somehow, is what is being talked about. This will open up some options for travel that were not there at the moment. So it can help to get travel back to normal. If there was good evidence that you weren't at risk of spreading the virus, such a passport might then allow quarantine to be waived. Waiver from quarantine. So yeah, it all makes sense to me, I must say. As the vaccine is rolled out, people will have the choice as to whether they get vaccinated or not. But as in life, all choices have consequences. You may have discovered that for yourself already. I have. Choices have consequences. And he said, and this is direct quote, there would be a cost to waiting until more people are immunised to roll out passports. So he's saying that failure to act would have a cost. Now, whether he means a medical cost, a financial cost, I don't know, but the idea that carrying on with the status quo is free is not true. There is a cost to what we're doing now, and vaccine passports may be a way of reducing that cost. Not going to comment on it, just throwing it out there. But Greece have said they'll require evidence of vaccination to let people in the country, and vaccine passports are already instigated or about to be instigated in Bahrain, Denmark and Sweden. For decades now, you've needed a yellow fever vaccine certificate to get into various African countries, for example. Not now, but you did for many, many years, because yellow fever is fortunately much less now. So this is nothing new, and I think it will inevitably come. So that is the current forecast from this channel, that this will come. You will need some form of evidence of vaccine for international travel, I'm sure, and very likely for a lot of domestic travel as well. Like it or not, it's probably going to come, and it could well be with us for a year or two. Right, secret I couldn't resist. This is a bit naughty. I couldn't resist this one. But secret antiviral medications. Now, the king of this country here, which was Swaziland, King Mututsi III. Sir, I've pronounced your name wrong. I know, my apologies. Anyway, it turns out that Eswatini, or what used to be called Swaziland. I learned how to say Swaziland. I haven't learned how to say the other one. Where have I gone? There we go. Now, it turns out they've got quite close links with Taiwan. And what seemed to happen here is this king got sick. He tested positive in January, 2 positive tests. Talked to his mates in Taiwan, and what the king said, what King Mututsi III said, was the president of Taiwan sent him some special antiviral medication. Now, this is doing the rounds on the internet, and it's also in the mainstream media as well. So is there some secret antiviral medication that this king was sent that made him better from the president of Taiwan? Good story. I suspect the answer is no. The king's got a little bit confused in his relaying of this. This happens all the time. People are always saying to me, oh, you know, I went in for this operation and they did this, that and the other, or they gave me this medication, or the doctor said something. And I know for a fact that they didn't, you know, because it's wrong. People are always misinterpreting medical information, but good story. Wouldn't it be nice if it were true, if there was some secret antiviral medication and the Taiwanese president suddenly released this on the world? But don't worry. There isn't. If there were, I mean, Taiwan's an open country. If there were, the scientists responsible would have already been given a Nobel Prize. And Taiwan, being a very entrepreneurial culture, would have no doubt allowed the rest of the world to share that for reasonable rates. Now, back to a really serious issue now. I've had a lot of emails of people, quite a few people are really quite concerned about this. And it is recombinant variant viruses. A lot of concern about this. So what would happen here is you have one variant and you have another variant, and they both infect a single person and a single cell at the same time. So, for example, you could have a California variant and a UK variant, and they both infect someone at the same time. Therefore, both viruses will get into a single cell at the same time. Now, this is well known in virology. This is what's called genetic shift. This is what causes influenza pandemics, for example, and other viruses. This is very well documented that this occurs. And it does seem to have occurred, actually, in this pandemic. So let's look at this. Lots of interesting science there if you want to read it. That one was quite useful. So the UK and the Californian variants, that's the B117 UK variant and the B1429 variant. It seems that these two variants both infected the same cell in one individual. So they got into a cell in an individual who had the same infection. So the B117 and the B1429, they both got into the same cell. They both infected the same cell. And in there, the RNA from that one and the RNA from that one combined. So you start off with two separate bits of RNA, and they fuse together to form one single bit of RNA with new characteristics containing the characteristics of that virus and that virus. This is called recombinant, generating what's called a recombinant variation, because both viruses infected one cell. And this is a risk whenever an individual person is infected with more than one type of it's the same type of virus, the SARS coronavirus 2, but two different variants of the virus. This is a risk, and as I say, it's well studied in influenza. Very well known phenomena from influenza studies. So this is what's happened. Combined genomes into a heavily mutated hybrid. So there was a hybrid virus detected, which had a combination of attributes of the B, or genetic material rather, from the B117 and the B1429. And of course, it's the genetic material that gives rise to the proteome and the nature of the virus. Now, this was discovered in a virus sample in Los Alamos National Laboratory, so it's not some Mickey Mouse place that they can diagnose properly. In fact, some people think that this viral recombination is how SARS coronavirus 2 originated, which is probably true. Where that took place is open to debate, in and around Wuhan, we believe. Where precisely in Wuhan is less certain. So one cell, one human cell, one host cell, 2 viral variants, and they can merge together. Multiple variants in circulation, this is more likely to occur. Now, the vast majority of times this happens, to be reassuring, the vast majority of times that you get a recombinant variant, that you get a completely new type of virus, this is a genetic change, and the vast majority of these are non-viable, and they'll replicate within the individual, but they won't spread. Normally, this has deleterious consequences. So really, this is a mutation. If you define a mutation as a change in the genetic material of an organism, and that's a fair way to define that, then you can get gradual changes, as happened with the UK variant or the California variant. That's called genetic drift. You just get gradual changes within a strain. But here we get a whole new variant all of a sudden. The genetic shifting that can cause pandemics with influenza. Now, most mutations, the vast majority, 99.9999% of mutations are deleterious to the well-being of the organism and will reduce its transmissibility. But the odd one, just the odd one, will have more pathogenicity, more virulence, and it therefore can spread around the world. So one of these hybrids has been detected in Los Alamos, basically. So one of them has been detected because there's quite a few variants in circulation. It's not surprising. In fact, this would have been anticipated. Worst outcome, more transmissible and more antibody resistant. So if it got the increased transmissibility of the UK variant and it got the increased antibody resistance of the California variant, which there does seem to be, then that could be a bad outcome. But I don't think we have evidence that that is the case, and we do not, certainly I've been looking, and we certainly don't have any evidence that it's been transmitted person to person. So yes, this could happen. Yes, it seems to have happened. No, it doesn't seem to have resulted in a variant that's being transmitted in California, as far as we know at the moment. Is it an ongoing risk, recombinant variation? Yes, it is. That's why we need to get the number of viruses and therefore the number of variants down as rapidly as possible through mass vaccination campaigns. Now, I've got another paper here, but I think it's a bit long, so I think we'll leave that one for tomorrow. It's a weekend. We'll take it a bit easy today. But there's a paper by the new head of the CDC, and Anthony Fauci, which we'll talk about tomorrow, but I don't want to go on for too long. So that is us for today. Thank you again for all those remarkably supportive comments. Obviously, you get trolls. Just ignore them. Don't worry about that. You get a few of those. But, it really is quite humbling for me to know that the virtually everyone who follows this channel has got a genuine interest in people's well-beings, which is what this is all about, and I appreciate your interest in mine. So thank you again, and that is us for today. Have a great rest of your Saturday and indeed into Sunday.